Hello everyone. Just getting myself together over here. I just got myself, whoops, sorry. I came and sat down and realized I didn't actually have my pages handy that I was about to run out of that I have to read. So, let's see. All right, great. But now I'm set. I am set. Hello, everyone. Hope you are having a good day today on this Friday, end of the week. I hope it's a good weekend for us all. So I'm hopefully this is a good time. We'll see. But so I'm planning to move these readings to this time regularly if this seems to work for people. There will still be Wednesday Q&As at the same time. This coming week is going to be on fan fiction, fandom, all that fun stuff. So it should be fun for me. Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm like going to be extremely nitpicky and like tweak this camera position. And this coming Monday, in the evening around 7 p.m., we're going to, Catherine Arden and I, we did an Instagram live a little while back on the Del Rey Books channel. We're going to try doing YouTube, partly because YouTube, when you do two people, it lets you go side by side. So we're going to try doing that on YouTube. I think probably on my YouTube channel, which is just Naomi Novik. We'll link to it around on Twitter and everything, and post it, make it the URL here on Insta. And that should be a lot of fun. We're going to try and do a little more of like a deep dive into writing stuff, that kind of thing. And if you have any questions in mind, drop them for us. And hopefully some of you guys will join us then. And for now, I'm going to be, for those of us joining us late, I'm going to be reading the next section of A Deadly Education, which is coming out in September. And this is the first book in the Scholomance trilogy. If you go to enter.thescholomance.com, which I chose because it looks really cool and did not think through how hard it is to say, but the link is in the Instagram bio. And if you go there, you can catch up on the full sampler, which is the first 3 chapters is there as a free digital download. The Random House made it all pretty and shiny. And we are very close to launching the first bit of the Choose Your Own Adventure, which I possibly have been having a little too much fun with, in the sense that I should have been writing instead of playing with the game. But don't tell my editor, she's not here yet. All right, so today I'm going to start with the reading. When last we left our intrepid heroine and hero, Elle had deserted Orion unceremoniously, leaving him to fight a bunch of mimics in the workshop, and grab the scrap that she needed to repair her door. And I will continue on from there. So, there was only one spell I could afford to cast. I shouted out the Old English floor washing charm, and jumped aside as all 4 of the chair mimics skidded on the wet, soapy slick and shot past me straight at Orion. I grabbed 2 of the pieces of scrap and ran for the door while he fought them. I'd use my bare hands to rap on the wire if I had to. I didn't have to. Orion caught up to me on the stairs, panting, carrying 2 more pieces of scrap and the pliers and the drill. "Thanks a lot," he said indignantly. He had a thin, bloody slice across one forearm and no other damage. "I knew you had them," I said bitterly. The climb up the stairs to our res hall took 15 solid minutes of trudging. We didn't talk, and nothing pestered us. I knocked on Aja's door on the way back to my room, swapped for wire, and also let her know I had a drill now, A lot of people who wouldn't trade with me would usually trade with her, and if I had something she didn't, she would broker for a cut. Then I had Orion keep watch while I fixed my door. It wasn't fun. I laboriously drilled holes in one piece of scrap and wired it in place over the hole he had left in the door, securing it thoroughly. I then sat there and wove some of the thinner wire around 4 thick strands to make a wider band, and I used it to wire the dented remains of my doorknob and lock roughly back in place. Then I pulled the door shut and did the same on the inside with the second piece of scrap. "Why don't you just use the mending charm?" Orion ventured tentatively, about halfway through the agonizingly boring process, after he looked around to see what was taking me so long. "I am using the mending charm," I said through my teeth. Even with the pliers and the drilled holes, my hands were throbbing. Orion kept watching with increasing confusion until I finally twisted down the last ragged end of wire. Then I put my hands flat on either side of the double-layered hole and shut my eyes. A basic version of Mend and Make is one of the spells we all learn in shop class. The classes are the only way to get the most critical general spells, and mending is pretty obviously on that list, as you can't get anything into the school but what little you're allowed to bring in at induction. And mending is one of the most difficult spells too, with dozens of variations depending on the materials you're working with and the complexity of what you're trying to fix. Only artificers really master it completely, and even then only within a specialized range of materials. But at least you can do it in your own bloody vernacular. "Make and mend, to my will bend, iron thrust and steel extend," I said. We all knew a lot of rhymes for mend and make. And I mapped in 17 knocks around the words, somewhere between the 23 you use for sheet metal and the 9 for wire. Then I tapped into the mana I'd built up, doing all that excessively nitpicky handwork. And the charm grudgingly went churning through the materials. The pieces of scrap slagged into something like a thick metallic putty, which I pushed into place to fill the gaping hole in the door. And as the surface went smooth and hardened under my hands, the doorknobs on either side made a rude noise like a belch, and finally hooked themselves back together, the deadbolt shooting back into place with a solid thunk. I dropped my hands, panting, and turned round. Orion was standing in the middle of my bedroom, staring like I was an exotic zoological specimen. "You're strict mana?" He made it sound like I was a member of a cult or something. I glared at him. "Not all of us can pull from Maleficaria. But why don't you pull from the air or the furniture? Everyone's got holes in their bedposts." He wasn't wrong. Cheating is a lot harder in here because there's no small living things to pull from, no ants or cockroaches or mice, unless you bring them in with you, which is awkward, since the only thing you can bring is what's physically on you at the moment of induction. But most people can pull small amounts of mana from the inanimate stuff around instead, leech heat from the air or disintegrate a bit of wood. It's a lot easier to do that than to pull mana from a living human being, much less another sorcerer, for most people. "If I pull, it won't come from there," I said. Orion was eyeing me with a growing frown. Galadriel," he said, a bit gently, as if he was starting to think I was a lunatic, one of the ones who'd just gone crazy inside. I'd had a wildly horrible day anyway, thanks to him, and that was the final straw. I reached out and grabbed at him. Not with my hands. I reached out and grabbed at his mana, at his life force, and gave it a hard, deliberate yank. Most wizards have to work at it to steal power from a living thing. There are rituals, exercise of will, voodoo dolls, blood sacrifices, lots of blood sacrifices. I barely have to try. Orion's life force came away from his spirit as easily as a fish on a line being tugged out of the water. All I needed to do was keep pulling, and it would end up in my hands, all that juicy power he'd built up. In fact, I could probably have followed his power-sharing lines to pull Malia from all his Enclave friends. I could have drained them all. Even as Orion's face went wide with appalled shock, I let go again, so the mana went snapping back into him like a rubber band. He staggered back a full pace, his hands coming up defensively like he was ready for a fight. But I ignored him and sat down with a hard thump on my bed, trying not to cry. Whenever I let my temper get away from me like that, I always feel rotten afterwards. It's rubbing my own face and how easy everything would be if I just gave in. He went on standing there, hands raised, looking a bit silly when I didn't do anything. "You're a Maleficer," he said after a moment, like he thought he was prodding me into doing something. "I know this is going to be a challenge for you," I said through my teeth, still fighting back the sniffles. "But try not being an idiot for 5 minutes. If I was a Maleficer, I'd have sucked you dry downstairs and told everyone you died in the workshop. It's not like anyone would have been suspicious." He didn't look like he'd found that particularly comforting. I rubbed the back of my sooty hand across my face. "Anyway," I added desolately, "if I was a Maleficer, I'd just suck all of you dry and have the whole school to myself." "Who'd want it?" Orion said after a moment. I snorted a laugh up into my nose. All right, he had a point. "A Maleficer!" "Not even a Maleficer," he said positively. He did lower his hands then, still warily, only to take another step back again when I stood up. I rolled my eyes and made a little jump at him with my hands raised like claws and squeaked, "Boo!" He glared at me. I went over to where he'd put the rest of the supplies on the floor. The rest of the scrap pieces got shoved under my mattress, where they couldn't be replaced by something unpleasant during the night without my noticing. The drill and pliers got strapped securely down to the lid of my storage chest, next to my 2 knives and my 1 precious small screwdriver. If you keep things strapped to the underside of the lid, then if they've come loose, you can see the straps dangling when you crack it a bit. I'm really systematic about checking, so I haven't had a tool go bad for a long time. The Scholomance doesn't waste its time. I went to the basin and rinsed off my hands and face again as well as I could. I was down to just a tiny bit left in my jug. "If you're waiting for a thank you, you'll be here a while," I told Orion after I finished drying off. He was still standing in the corner, eyeing me. "Yeah, I noticed," he said with a huff. "You weren't kidding about your affinity, were you? So you're, what, a strict Mana Maleficer?" "That doesn't even make sense. I'm not a Maleficer at all. And as long as I'm trying not to turn into one, maybe you'd better go away," I said, spelling it out, since that was evidently necessary. It's got to be nearly curfew by now anyway. Bad things happen if you're in someone else's cell past curfew. Otherwise, of course, we'd all double and triple up and take shifts on watch. Not to mention that seniors would be en masse shoving freshmen out of their rooms on the top floor and postponing graduation for a year or 2. Apparently, there was a rash of incidents like that early on, after people started to realize about the gigantic horde of mals waiting down in the graduation hall. I don't know exactly what the builders did about it, but I do know that having 2 or more kids in a room makes you a horrible magnet. And forget about running out into the corridor trying to get back to your room once you realize what trouble you're in. 2 girls just down the way from me tried it in our first year. One of them spent a long time screaming outside my door before she stopped. The other one didn't make it out of the room at all. It's not the sort of thing anyone sane wants to risk. Orion just kept staring at me. Abruptly, he said, "What happened to Louisa?" I frowned at him, wondering why he was asking me, and then I realized, "You think I did for her?" "It wasn't one of the mals," he said. "My room's next to hers, and she disappeared overnight. I'd have known. I stopped Mel's going in after her twice." I thought it over fast. If I told him, he was going to go after Jack. On one hand, that meant Jack would probably cease to be a problem for me. On the other hand, if Jack denied it, which wasn't unlikely, I could end up with him and Orion as problems together. It wasn't worth the risk when I didn't have any proof. "Well, it wasn't me," I said. They're practicing maleficers in here, 4 in the senior class at least. There were 6, actually, but 3 of them were openly practicing. So saying 4 would hopefully make me look like I had a tiny bit of inside knowledge, believable, but not enough to be worth interrogating. Why don't you pester one of them if you don't have enough to do looking out for the sad and gormless? His face went set and hard. Considering I've saved your life twice, he began. 3 times, I said coldly. It threw him off. The Chimera, end of last term, I supplied even more coldly. Since I was obviously going to stick in his head now, he was at least going to remember me correctly. Fine, so 3 times then. You might at least... No, I mightn't. He stopped, flushing. I don't think I'd ever seen him angry before. It was always just, aw shucks, hunching and resolution. I didn't ask you for your help, and I don't want it, I said. There's more than 1,000 students still left in our year, and all of them gagging to swoon over you. Go and find one of them if you want some adoration. The bells rang in the hallway, 5 minutes to curfew. And if you don't, go anyway. I grabbed my door and flipped the shiny new, dull new bolt and opened it. He obviously wanted to leave on a snappy comeback, but couldn't think of one. I suppose he wasn't ever called on to produce them in the ordinary course of things. After a moment of struggle, he just scowled and stalked out. I'm delighted to report my repaired door slammed shut on his heels beautifully. And that is the end of chapter 2. So I'm going to stop there for today. I still am going to read through chapter 3, since that brings us to the end of the sampler. And then I don't know. Do people like these live readings? Maybe I'll either do another pass through it for YouTube just to have landscape videos because Instagram won't let me do landscape. I find it deeply frustrating to not be able to turn the camera. So now I feel like I will take some questions, and if you have any, you can drop them in. This is a good question. Why do we share an obsession for magic schools? What is so great about magic schools? Well, I will say, a few things, right? One is that high school, right? That school, the process of going to school is such a deeply formative experience that almost all of us share, almost anywhere in the world. School is now such a common, and obviously with variations, but the basic idea of you take all the children and you stick them in a room and you teach them things, it is a clearly sort of standard formula that we all understand. And so it's that common ground, right, that lets you tap in to people's personal experiences. And I do feel, that's one of the reasons that I like doing fairy tale retellings. It's one of the reasons that I like fanfic, is that the more common ground you have with your reader, right, the easier it is to kind of grab, to connect, the easier it is to tell the communicate the story that you're trying to communicate. And the more emotions and the more energy your reader is bringing to the process. And then the other piece of it is that it's also, school is a place that is a community, and it's not a chosen community, right? In that you're put in school typically with other people that you have not chosen. I mean, maybe to some extent your parents can choose, but even then, usually there are a lot of factors going into what school a child goes into. And so it's one of those places where you're in community with people you don't necessarily want to be in community with, and that creates, and who are not necessarily compatible with you, want different things than you. And so anyway, that's a very sort of kind of technical reason why, that I think that school stories in general are an interesting place to work in. And magic schools, I mean, obviously learning magic is especially exciting, because it's, whatever, it's the chance of mapping this experience that you have, this deep, familiar experience that you have, and connecting it to wonder, connecting it to magic, connecting it to higher stakes, typically, and obviously that's what magic school lets you do. It lets you amplify the stakes for your characters so that they match the stakes the way that they feel to you as a human being, right? Because I feel like, so Galadriel thinking about, strategizing about where she's going to sit in the cafeteria, that is, in the book, it is literally of the literal importance that it emotionally is for when you're young and you're anxious and you don't know where to sit, or frankly when you're older and you're anxious coming into a situation where you don't know where to sit, and that's, yeah, so I feel like that's one of the reasons that it's such a powerful thing. The enemies to lovers question, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to read the book. I'm not going to spoil it for you. This is, YA or adult fantasy. I write what I write, and my publisher decides. I think technically it is being published as adult fantasy. Obviously, I think that, both with Uprooted and Spinning Silver, as soon as you have a protagonist who is under the age of 18, there's some automatic switch that seems to go on in many people's heads, that makes it YA, even if the book is not at all appropriate for YA. But in terms of, I think that there's certain expectations in YA as a genre, and frankly also in fantasy as a genre, in different parts of fantasy as a genre, and I don't care. I don't. The things that I write about when I'm writing in genre and speculative fiction, it's always about what about it interests me. What's the story that I want to tell? What's the journey that my characters are going through? And so I don't, and in fact, if I did anything, I don't actively reject tropes and conventions, but I certainly don't aim for them. And if anything, what typically I am looking to do is take a trope or a convention and let it inspire me to move somewhere completely different. Not in reaction, more like, so I've talked about this a little bit in Spinning Silver, right? There was a moment where I was trying to write the next piece of Wanda's story, and I wasn't sure where she was going. And so I was like, all right, what fairy tale is coming to me? What's coming to me? And Hansel and Gretel came to me. And I wrote, Wanda and her brother going into the woods and coming to the witch's house. But that's obviously, it's not literally Hansel and Gretel. It's not literally the exact same story. It wasn't an exact retelling. That was the seed. That was the seed, and then I let the plant grow how it grows. Yeah. So that's, I feel like, the answer. Let's see. So what length will the book be? The book is, so I had this brilliant plan. I went in, I was like, I'm going to write 3 short, tight books. They're going to be 75,000 words a piece. I'm going to pull back. First of all, I was going to write 2 books like this. That was my plan. And now it's about 100,000 words. So I failed. But it's, before, for Uprooted and Spinning Silver, I aimed for 100,000 words and ended up at like 120, 150,000. So, I suppose I failed in exactly the same proportion. So that's good. I did want to have this book move quickly. That was one of the things that I wanted to try and do with this book, that I felt like there was a pace to it, and it just came quickly. So that's not necessarily, I think, a factor of how long the book as a whole is, because you can write a very fast, long book. But in this case, that's sort of what I was aiming with. So it's a bit shorter than Uprooted, is the answer. Let's see. Oh, I'm so sorry. So this is I'm just sending hearts out to Caitlin CI. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And, my sister's a frontline worker too. She's a hospitalist in DC. And, we're super grateful to all of you guys, and, hopeful that you are all getting the protection you need, and and staying home to try and keep the spread down. So thank you. And I hope that many more good things are coming your way than just this book. And hopefully this book will be one of them. Here's a good question. Can you recover from stealing other people's mana? Can you give up being a Maleficer? So this was in one of the earlier sections that I read, that to a certain extent. So the idea about this is that, mana, once you take what makes mana is sort of power in this universe. And when you take power that is not rightly yours and you take it away from somebody, they're resisting, and you pull it even though you're causing harm to them, that taints it, that turns it into Malia. And my feeling is that once you start doing that, the more you do it, the harder it gets to build your own mana and hold on to your own mana, because, of course, you're sort of atrophying your skills, and you're changing what you're doing. And the metaphor that I used for it is smoking, right? Which is, you can stop. So yes, you can quit Malia, but it's very hard. The more you do it, the harder it is, and the more damage it causes to you that lasts. And so, for instance, if you give up, there's a description of a character, Lou, who is currently very judiciously using Malia in small amounts. She's sacrificing, Elle believes that she's sacrificing small animals that she brought in, like hamsters, with her or something. That's Elle's theory, and that she's sacrificing them on a schedule to give herself a big dose of power that she then sort of rations out. And at the same time, it's not completely overriding her ability to hold mana, and it's she's using it very judiciously at very carefully measured intervals. And that when she graduates, she's going to, therefore, because she's been so careful, if she basically sort of gave up magic for several years, for like 5-10 years, she would completely regenerate. She would be able to go back to using mana again. But she might still be a bit vulnerable to falling back. Like if she started using Malia again, if she cheated at all, as many people do routinely, that might make it harder for her. She might be more vulnerable to starting back up again. And somebody like Jack, the other Maleficer she describes, who is already literally murdering other students and draining their power to sustain himself, he basically almost certainly does not have a chance of going back. But similarly, somebody who goes that far in the first place is less likely to repent If you've made that choice, then, and you're not even just sort of like cheating a little bit, you're literally going whole hog, murderous, then I think that's harder. So, and also you run out of time. You're on a clock. The more aggressively you use Malia. And it becomes a sort of thing where you have to use more of it to keep yourself going, because the damage from it is sort of destroying you at the same time as it's giving you power. Let's see a few more questions. Oh yes. Will there be dragons? So I kind of like to sneak a dragon or dragon-like thing into almost every book, even if it's only as a little Easter egg for myself. So you have to try and find it. It's not a ton. It's not necessarily a dragon per se. And let's see other questions. Oh man. Oh, so here's a quick easy one. How long will the series be? So it's going to be a trilogy. I originally planned it to be a duology. And then I wrote the ending of the first book and discovered that I was not ending where I thought I was ending. So I had to squish a third book into the middle. And so it will be a trilogy. And yeah, I think that'll be fun. Yes, sorry, hang on. I'm going to try and pin this one if I can. Come on, let me pin it. Nope, it's letting me flip the camera unhelpfully. That's not very exciting. But there's a question from Grandma Sophie. Is it unusual that Orion can get mana from Mal's? Yes, it is very unusual. Elle has never heard of it before. And yeah, that is not typically the direction that it flows. So yes, that's essentially what makes him so, he's got the combat affinity, but that's what makes him so dangerous to Mal's is that, typically what happens is students have to desperately build enough mana so that when a Mal attacks them, they have enough to fight it off. And, at the very most, chase it away. And so that part of what that means is, of course, you have to budget it. You don't, when you're fighting, when a monster is attacking you, it's not just, I'm going to throw a fireball. You have to think about, am I going to get attacked later this afternoon in the cafeteria? If I throw a fireball now, will I have enough mana left to put up a shield in the cafeteria later today? And so the answers, so it's a constant process of thinking strategically and tactically at the same time, which is obviously brutally hard. And you have this really limited resource. So that is the life that Elle is living, right? That she is getting attacked regularly and has to constantly be thinking, not just about, and at the same time, you also have to think really long-term strategically that you have to have enough mana put aside for graduation. When you literally get dumped into a pit of monsters along with all the other students, and if you're the slowest gazelle in the room, the lions eat you. So yeah, and that's an example of the situation. And so for Orion, because for him, if he kills a Mal, he gets power. He literally gets power back. And so he can just go flat out. He doesn't need to worry. He can use whatever spells he needs to use because he's going to get the power back at the end. And obviously that's an enormous advantage. And so that's why Elle is so violently envious and bitter, among other things. And Holly asks, is there a reason why Orion isn't being attacked? And I mean, if you think about it from the point of view of a Mal, you probably would not really want to go after Orion Lake. Orion Lake is a bad choice. And if there's more to it than that, you have to, I don't know, read more of the books. I'm not going to answer all the questions. If there are any chance the release might be moved up, sadly, I think the machinery involved in choosing a release date is something completely obscured for me, that I just sort of, my publisher hands me a day and I'm like, okay. And it's, at this point, it's literally been coordinated with the UK, and I think with publishers in other countries as well. And so, yeah, it's not a straightforward thing to change the release dates. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we also want bookstores to be open. Yeah, we want indie bookstores to be open again. So hopefully that'll be happening by then. What other questions? Oh, here, I will put this up. I'm guessing that's a link that's the pre-order link. So if you just go to that link, it will take you to pre-order for any of wherever you are in the world, hopefully, assuming it works properly. And that's the, yeah. So that's, let's see, what else? Let me quickly zoom back and see if there are, because I know there were, whoops, sorry, I'm getting myself. Do you listen to music while writing? I used to. I used to listen to music a lot, and more recently, I think probably since there was an addition to the household, which is almost 10 years ago now, I have not been. That it became like a level. There was a point at which it was a level of distraction, of sort of white noise, that helped me. And then the amount of attention that I had sort of faded, it became something that now distracted me. I feel like there's a wonderful cover of Everybody Knows, by completely spacing on the name. I'll have to look it up. Elizabeth and the Catapult, I want to say. That might be completely wrong, but that song is, of course, by Leonard Cohen. But that particular song, sort of, I feel like is Elle's theme song, which is sort of terrible. Can we peek at my bookshelf? Sure. Let me see which one. There are many bookshelves. So I'll take you over here to this one. That's the this is we've sort of got our books in kind of weird ways. The books for which we have many copies. So for instance, I have about like 40 different versions of Tolkien, so those live here in the bedroom, along with my stack of Patrick O'Brian, Georgette Heyer, Laura Ingalls Wilder, although many of those have been pillaged by my child. This is the Sherlock Holmes plus many of the pastiches. I really love The Beekeeper's Apprentice, Laurie King. If you're, I totally recommend that. Let's see, what else can I show you guys? And then this is sort of like the literature shelves. And then out front we have all the science fiction and fantasy. Let me see what on here. they're so it's in alphabetical order, not in order of passion. But let's see, what do I have that I can share? Here, sorry, this is small, so it's actually like, this is Marie Ponsat, a wonderful poem. Maybe I'll just read it to you guys. It's, why not? It's because it's a lovely poem. That just, is sort of one of those like bite-sized tiny poems. It's slightly bleak, but Scholomance is a little bit bleak too, so I feel like that's not unreasonable. Death is breathtaking. We all die young. Our lives defined by failure of the heart. Our fire drowned in failure of the lungs. Still planning on pouring the best ripe part of wines our need or grasp has sucked or wrung. From fruit and sun, we're stopped before we start. Taste like talk fades from the stiffening tongue. And that is from The Birdcatcher, from Oceans. And so I just, just the flavor of those words. I mean, obviously it's sort of very sad and grim, but at the same time, just, yeah, I don't know. I love the flavor. I love the taste of word in poetry, in great poetry like that. That's, and just the rhyme in those lines, and the way that they sort of, that the rhyme is there, but it doesn't, you almost don't notice it until you look at it again, because it just feels right as you go. So yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of word goals. Yeah, so that's some stuff. And I'll try and find some other things to recommend. Maybe on Monday. Maybe I'll ping Catherine, and we'll make sure to bring a few recommendations each. Although obviously I recommend Catherine's books. So especially if you like Spinning Silver, I feel like the Winter Night trilogy is just going to absolutely be your jam. So definitely give that a go. And yeah, so I feel like that's my suggestions. What else? Let's see. Quick difference. Is stealing mana and gifting it to others different in its effect? Absolutely, 100%. Once, if you give mana freely to somebody else, it's mana. It's not Malia. The thing that makes it Malia, it's sort of not, it's not that the power itself changes, right? It's more like what it does to you. It's sort of, a dollar bill is a dollar bill, whether you find it on the street or you steal it. You can buy the same things with it. But what it does to you to steal it, that is what makes it Malia. It's the fact that you are taking it away against somebody who is fighting you, against resistance, and so that damage, it's the scars it leaves on you, the damage it does to you as a human being, to take from others selfishly in that way. And that you are, obviously you have to, it's violence. You are having to commit violence in order to get that mana for yourself. And it involves, hurting, and that harms, as I think, that obviously that's metaphorical, but it's a metaphor that I believe is quite true, that, that selfishness often harms the selfish, at least as much as it harms those that they are selfish from, and that's and not in always obvious ways, not in obviously in this case there's a very literal and physical effect of becoming a Maleficer, of using Malia, but it's not a sort of it's not an easy, it's not a clear dividing line here, which I think is something that I like. You know, I always prefer things to be kind of difficult and muddy so that, you know, you cheat a little. Does that mean you are evil? Does that make you a bad person because you killed a bunch of ants to make a slice of cake? Where is the line? Where do you have to stop and say, wow, I am a bad person? And where on that line do you tell yourself that you don't care that you are a bad person, that you are that you are deliberately choosing to be a bad person, and almost knowingly embarking on that pure selfishness and what it robs you of. And that's, to me, those are interesting questions, and that's kind of the questions that I'm asking myself, and that the book is sort of asking. All right, so let's see. It's 2:48. My voice is starting to wear out. So I'm very happy for those of you who have been waiting patiently for the limited edition of Spinning Silver. I'm happy to tell you I finished my signing pages. I'm so excited. I have to do signing pages now. You know, literally I'm rationing it. I can only do 25 pages a day. So it was literally a process of months. And yeah, so I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Yes, so next Monday night around 7 p.m. on YouTube, come and join me and Catherine Arden. And next Wednesday at 2 p.m. here on Insta Live for another Q&A. And yeah, so that's what's happening for now. And keep an eye, if you are not yet subscribed to the Scholomance mailing list, go to enter.thescholomance.com and sign up. You will get the free 3-chapter digital download. And you will also be put on the mailing list so you get notified when we start the Choose Your Own Adventure game, so just here, I'm going to give you guys a tiny little peek, if I can. I turned off my monitor. But so just to kind of give you guys a tiny little preview, let's see if I can, I think I will probably just flip the camera. So, you know, this is what the idea is. And we're going to be, and once we start it, what's going to happen is we're going to build it out based on what you guys vote for. So we're going to put up a piece of the puzzle, and you say, which room are we going to? What is the action that we take? And then that's what we'll build and unlock each week. And once you get to there, that piece will become available on the website for replaying. Up until, obviously, I feel the first few weeks, the game on the website is going to be fairly thin, because we're waiting for you guys to tell us what rooms to actually build and where to go. And then we're going to build it out little by little over time, and until hopefully we're planning to release a new sort of room or encounter once a week from now until when the book comes out, and a little bit beyond. I think I'm sort of mentally aiming for Halloween as a bit of a grand finale, so hopefully by then the game will be kind of fun, and a little, I love Choose Your Own Adventure. I grew up with those books, and they're just ridiculously fun. I see some people are having trouble with the digital download sampler. I will look into that right away as soon as I get off here, and we'll see about fixing that. And I'll send out. Hopefully I can fix that link, so it's actually available. And if not, we will send out a new mailing to the mailing list with a corrected link for it. So sorry about that, guys. And yeah, I will talk to you all soon. and see you hopefully on Monday night. Have a great weekend.